Good morning, everyone. My name is Kate Lemon. I'm the Marketing and Communications Coordinator for the North Country Trail Association. And today I wanted to chat about our partnership with StoryCorps that we kicked off last year. And we are continuing efforts today and into the future. I want to start off with letting you all know that this is not a how-to of how to use StoryCorps. There are a million wonderful resources on their website on how to use the app, how to use the online recording tools, and I don't want to spend your time here reinventing the wheel on that. So it's not necessarily how to use the tools that StoryCorps offers, but rather I wanted to let you know what we have done and how to prepare for you to be involved in the future, how you could set up planning for your involvement, for your recordings, how to, there's going to be a little bit of technical how to as far as the process goes, what to expect and whatnot. But also let's dive into the actual content. I'm hoping this will serve as some inspiration for what your recordings could be when you might want to talk about the North Country Trail via StoryCorps. So with that, I will kick it off right now. To give you a brief overview about StoryCorps itself, they're an independent nonprofit whose mission is to preserve and share humanity's stories in order to build connections between people and create a more just and compassionate world. So in the past 20 years, they've recorded and archived more than 70,000 conversations from over 500,000 participants. All of these recordings are archived within the Library of Congress, and stories from our community are included in this collection. A quote from StoryCorps reads, "And while our stories are broadcast weekly on NPR to over 12 million listeners, StoryCorps is an independent nonprofit, sharing select stories with the public through our podcast, animated shorts, digital platforms, and best-selling books." This is just a nice insight into what is being done with those recordings. So to give you an overview of what we did, in 2022, last year, we at the North Country Trail Association partnered with StoryCorps to record over 24 really incredible conversations between people who develop, maintain, protect, promote, and use the North Country National Scenic Trail. Through recording, sharing, and preserving these conversations, we hope to recognize our dedicated volunteers and members, elevate awareness of the trail and preserve its history, grow community leadership, and expand the NCTA volunteer base. So we recorded virtually for 2 days in July of last year, and then for 3 days in person at our celebration event in Walker, Minnesota. All of these recordings were facilitated by StoryCorps staff. I'd like to share one of those recordings with you now. This is Tom and Mary Moberg.
that story goes back to the mound builders 5,000 years ago.
For us personally, I think we've gained this amazing appreciation for North Dakota, for its prairies and oak savannas and sunflower fields. When people say, why do you spend your time almost like you have jobs working on this trail? We always say, well, we hope it'll be there for our grandchildren and their children. And we've taken our grandchildren out there and they've hiked with us. And we do hope that future generations, when they walk on the trail, will continue to see and appreciate the beauty and the history of what we're walking by.
So as you saw, that was Tom and Mary Moberg. And that was one of the options that StoryCorps gave us during our participation, which I'll talk about here in the options. So you can record with a StoryCorps facilitator. Individuals can book appointments at a number of locations with a number of options, or an organization as a whole like us, we hired StoryCorps to collaborate on a recording project. So when I went through our that bullet point of our recording days, how we did some virtual and some in-person recording, that was all decided between StoryCorps and ourselves on what would work best for both of us. But today I really want to focus on recording with self-directed tools. So again, recording with others in the same room using the StoryCorps app, or you can record with folks that are farther away from you using your web browser. So using your computers with StoryCorps Connect in case you don't have a smartphone or a device to use the app on. There's a link at the bottom there about participation options. And again, that's what I'm diving into today. So pre-recording, these are things to consider when you're setting up a recording, when you're thinking about doing this. Select a partner. Whose perspective or experience would you like to hear? Who would ask great questions and guide you through your storytelling? Do you want to discuss a shared experience together? This also doesn't have to be between you and someone else. Maybe you're just facilitating something and you want to hear a story from two people that doesn't involve you, and that's okay too. Set some goals and agree on some questions before the recording session. Is this going to be more of a conversation or an interview? What topics should be discussed, or what answers are you seeking? What messages do you want to relay? I'll get into that a little bit here later on some themes and messages that you can consider that might help create some framework for this interview. But think about what you might talk about. StoryCorps has some really great options online that are a list of different questions and tips for a good conversation. I'll also expand on that here in a little bit, but there's some awesome resources online. Then you're definitely going to want to download the StoryCorps app on your mobile device if you plan to record in person, or get online and get set up with StoryCorps Connect if the participants are going to record remotely. Definitely spend some time learning how the platforms function and try a test recording or two before you actually dive into the official recording. Some additional prep for the recording day itself. Prepare your space. Consider even the most mundane background noises like a running refrigerator, distant road noise, or nearby stairwells. Maybe you're in an apartment or an office building. Think about the sounds that you can't control and how can you try to best mitigate those. Choose or prepare a room with soft surfaces to reduce sound reverberation and echo. Soft surfaces sounds a little silly, but think about carpets and rugs versus hardwood floors. A room with a lot of soft furniture like couches and armchairs, blankets and curtains, things like that actually help a lot reducing reverberation around the room. Think about cathedral ceilings or a room with a drop ceiling instead. Think about how the sound might carry around the room. You definitely don't need high-tech equipment to do these recordings. Again, we're talking about just doing it on a smartphone, but think about the surface the phone is sitting on. Think about your surroundings. Smartphones these days are equipped to record very high quality audio as well as video. But again, there's things that you can do to improve that even more so. You're going to want to plan adequate time for everyone to settle in and have a meaningful experience. There is no time limit really on these recordings. I do believe the app might time out after an hour and a half. But even so, you could sit down and plan a 15-minute conversation with someone. That's okay. Just make sure that you're giving yourselves time to really get your conversation rolling, get comfortable with each other, have time to talk about everything you want to talk about, and consider that settle in time. Maybe you've scheduled an hour for you two to get together and talk, but you arrive, you might have 15-20 minutes of settling in, using the restroom, grabbing some water, eating a snack, just catching up on some basic, how was your morning? And so make sure that there's adequate time for you to settle in and really have that good experience together. And of course, you'll want to ensure all of your devices are fully operational and batteries are charged. Nothing is more disappointing than being ready to go, having done all this preparation and realizing your phone only has 5% battery. Remember, it's super helpful to test everything before the actual recording day too. Make sure you know how that app is working, how it works on your computer, do a test recording or two, so that when you're in the day, in the moment, you know what you're doing. I'll show you this quick video. That's a resource from StoryCorps. You can find this on their website as well for best practices for conducting an interview.
Hi, I'm Naomi, and today I'm going to talk you through StoryCorps best practices for conducting an interview. Arrive early and prepare to answer any questions your interview partner may have. Set up in an area that is comfortable and conducive to good sound quality. Remind your interview partner how you hope to share their interview and that you will discuss release forms at the end. Be sure to have your questions with you. Let them know if you will be taking notes, how long the interview will be, and that they can take breaks, and assure them that there are no right or wrong answers. In the beginning of the interview, do a sound check. Once you're ready to begin, both of you should state your name, your age, today's date, your location, and your relationship to your interview partner. You may want to begin with a specific time or topic in that person's life that interests you. Questions that encourage vivid details can make the interview special. You should reference your list, but don't be afraid to go off script and ask new questions. Does it look like your interview partner has more to say? Did they become more animated when talking about a specific topic? Or did they seem uncomfortable? Body language is a good cue for whether to ask a question or move on. Be sure to ask follow-up questions to get deeper into a story. Remember, you can take turns asking each other questions. As the interview comes to an end, think of some reflective questions. These can be more serious or broad. So I guess I would ask you, how would you like to be remembered? Is there anything that you've never told me but want to tell me now? Don't forget to discuss the release form options and how you'll be sharing the recording. You can wrap up the interview by thanking each other. At the end, this is a great opportunity to take a photo together. Most of all, relax and have fun. Enjoy the opportunity to share the stories and closeness that can come from this experience.
So there were some really great tips there. I think I really enjoyed when they get into think about body language and see what's really sparking people's interest. Again, it's wonderful to prepare a list of questions, but also let it flow really organically. So once you've done the recording, there's going to be a few things you want to do. Again, I talked to you about this not being a tutorial necessarily, but I think some of these are really important points to make. So StoryCorps will prompt you to archive the recording right after it has been finished. So here's a few screenshots from the app itself that would be used on your mobile device. So the first image shows that the audio has been recorded. You're welcome to listen to it right there, or you can just click next to move forward. The second step is including all kinds of information like the title, a summary, and the recording location. You'll see there are a lot of red asterisks. That means those are all required fields. So take some time to go through this. Excuse me, it doesn't have to be super in-depth, but try to be descriptive enough from the searchability standpoint. Make sure that this isn't so generic that you're not going to be able to find it yourself or others won't understand what it's about. The third image is about the participants. This is a really neat feature in that you can add someone's email address so that they can hear the recording afterwards. They get it sent to their email and they have access, direct access to it, which is cool. Again, everything that's archived, once you officially archive it, it is saved on your StoryCorps app through your profile, and it's also saved into the StoryCorps archives and then the Library of Congress. So they will be made public. That's actually in the next step there. You can adjust that too, but generally speaking, they will be made public. And all these steps that you're taking here improve searchability so that people can actually find them. That's also really important there to not only add the participants, but tagging your story and using some keywords. Feel free to go crazy with the general keywords so that people can really dig deep and find something. Are you talking about hiking, volunteering, trail use, National Scenic Trail, the North Country Trail, and same with organization. We do ask that if you're recording about the North Country Trail and your experiences on it, that you mention the North Country Trail Association there. Again, just so that we're made aware of it, just so we can find it as well, and that all of our recordings are grouped together. But at the same time, if you are with another organization, a friend group, an affiliate, a partner, maybe it's your own company that you have, feel free to put anything in there. And same with places. There's an example at the very bottom. You can see Minnesota, but feel free to dive deeper into exact location if you would like. Again, anything that you put here just improves searchability on a listener's end. And lastly, you can choose if this interview is public so that literally anyone can listen to it. You can keep it within the StoryCorps community, meaning someone has to have an account on the StoryCorps app or the online archive, or that it is private to you. We understand that while the point of all of this and this webinar is really to encourage everyone to share their stories about the North Country Trail, we also realize this is an important tool for folks to be able to maybe have a meaningful conversation with people and save it for something that's extra personal to them. So there is the option to keep it private. And by all means, if that's something you would choose to do, you are welcome to do so. After it's been archived, make a plan to share it with the audiences of your choice. Is this going to be something that you pitch out to local media, or are you going to keep it internal? Does it need to be edited for specific uses? Maybe that 45-minute conversation is way too long to share on a podcast or on your social media. Maybe this is something that needs to be shortened to like 3 to 5 minutes. What resources do you need to get all of this in order? Then share it. Anytime that you do put something out there, whether it's in email or social media or to local media, to YouTube, anything like that that's going to the masses, we would love for you to share all of those recordings and successes with us as NCTA staff so that we can help you celebrate, track, and share that story farther. The more that it gets circulated like that, we want to help push it out even further and share that story beyond your circles if that's something that you have the desire to do. And if you're posting on social media, please tag us. Again, not only are we then notified that it's out there, but also it's getting then shared with anyone who is following North Country Trail on Instagram or Facebook. If you're pitching to media, include a little explanation of the NCTA, the North Country National Scenic Trail, as well as our relationship with the Park Service. That's going to get you some more leverage. That's going to answer some more questions and help folks understand, maybe through this press release that you put out, where this is actually coming from, as well as the main website URL too, northcountrytrail.org. So what are you actually going to talk about during these recordings? Now that you know how to go about this, what do you want to actually talk about? Consider these following themes and messages. These are things that we as North Country Trail Association staff worked with StoryCorps staff to come up with. Heritage, experience, service, and benefit. Heritage is really a reflection back on the history of the trail, of the association, and the partnerships that needed to be in place for everything to happen accordingly, and how things happened along that timeline, and how the association and the trail got to where it is today. This is something that, even if you weren't involved in any kind of early planning efforts, heritage is still a very strong word and strong theme. What was your first experience with the North Country Trail, maybe right when it became a national scenic trail back in 1980? So there's a lot of angles you can take with this. Experience. We really loved that term, collective impact. Think about all the volunteers, members, donors, trail adopters, landowners, affiliates, and partners. Who's out there doing this work to make the trail what it is, to make it available to everyone? Let's reflect back on some work that you're doing, or maybe a current project that you're working on. Why do you choose to volunteer your time? Why do you choose to volunteer your service, your skills? Why do you choose to be a member of the association or of your local chapter? Why do you choose to, use a bit of your money to put toward bettering the association, bettering the trail? Trail adopters, you chose a section of trail to maintain for yourself. That's something that you're giving a little bit extra time to monitor this area. Why are landowners choosing to host the trail on their property? And affiliates and partners diving into the partnership that we have together. So a lot of experience in that one. And that also ties into service as well, these resourceful guides. This is a little bit of the flip side of experience on some of the behind the scenes work. Talk about leadership structure of the chapter, trail protection, advocacy, DEI work, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion, our Next Generation Coalition. Again, this is a little bit more of how are we creating a welcoming community for those who might be interested in joining us, and for those who are currently here. What planning is being done so that those experiencing the trail, such as volunteers and so on, what planning is being done so that they can do their work appropriately? And then benefit. This is probably the most wide casted net. It's trail users. Talk about mental and physical health of using the trail or working on the trail. Conservation around it, trail availability. Why is this trail a benefit to you? How has it benefited you and your community? And by no means are these totally exclusive. These are just supposed to be sort of guide rails for you to help direct your conversation and maybe keep it focused. Because again, there are folks in our community that can talk to all these things. They can speak to the history. They've been involved since the beginning. Maybe they're a trail adopter and a volunteer and a chapter leader and a trail user. But this is a nice way to maybe keep your conversation focused so that you can hone in on a couple things and really dive into detail. Then heck, maybe you could do another recording another time and touch on some other topics. Now, this is a lot about a lot of these guidelines and resources are directed to individuals. Maybe I'm talking to you directly as an individual who might be interested in recording about your experience. Totally cool. But there might be some on this webinar as well that are chapter leaders that might be looking to collect multiple recordings of multiple people in their chapter or within their community. So what opportunities will you have to recruit participants? What can you say at group hikes, at work days, at meetings, and at other events? How can you let people know that this is an option for them, and what plans you might have for StoryCorps recordings within your community. It's also low-hanging fruit and very, very natural to go for the people who have the most experience. Let's record conversations between people who have been here the longest, who have built the most structures, who have been the members for the longest, or have been chapter leaders since the beginning. This is all wonderful and totally encouraged. But think of the flip side of that. Who is new or outside of your chapter that might be experiencing the trail in different ways than you? What unique perspectives could they offer? Now, I don't recommend someone who's coming to their first meeting, you immediately pitch a StoryCorps recording and overwhelm them. I mean, play that out as you see fit, but think about someone who's, oh, you've shown up to these past handful of group hikes. You've been here for the past few work days. How do you feel about this so far? Would you be willing to sit down for a half an hour with me to record your experiences? How have you felt welcomed? What new skills have you learned? What perspective did you have coming into this, and how is that different now? So think about the new folks as well. Also, think about how you want to collect these conversations in perpetuity. Is this something you want to do just one time and then call it good, which is very okay? Or is this something you want to keep on going? Maybe you plan out to record conversations a few times a year. Maybe set a goal that your chapter is going to record a certain amount of conversations each year. It doesn't have to be a lofty goal. Maybe it's one per year. Maybe it's one every quarter. Maybe you just want to make sure that every incoming chapter president does a StoryCorps recording at some point. It's totally up to you, but think about how you could go beyond just a one-off. So to give you some examples of what we have done, how we chose participants, again, this is not an inclusive list. This is just a handful of samples. We have recorded quite a few more people, and we will intend to record more people. Again, we really welcome anyone from the North Country Trail community to share your conversations, share your experiences with us. These are just a few examples we're sharing with you today to show you how we prioritized some of our initial recordings with our StoryCorps facilitators. And this is how we made sure we were getting a balance of perspectives throughout all of our recordings. So the first, we had Andrea Ketchmark and Gary Werner. So Andrea is the current executive director of NCTA, and Gary is the former executive director of PNTS, which is the Partnership for the National Trail System. They're a nonprofit based in DC, and they've got close partnership with us as well as other trails across the country. So they talked a lot about advocacy efforts and trail planning and protection efforts, and a little bit of the history on how the organizations got to where they were today, as well as the partnership that has gotten the trail system to where it is today. Ruth and Dan Duro, they spoke. They're a married couple from New York. Ruth has been involved with the NCTA leadership for many years, and she's an absolute wealth of institutional knowledge. And together, she and Dan have hiked the entire North Country National Scenic Trail over about 20 years. In their recording, they talked heavily about trail use, but there are a lot of undertones of volunteerism, of their membership, and of the importance of the trail community to them, and why their involvement beyond just trail use was just so meaningful to them, and how that has improved their trail use. We heard from Apple Pie and Quinn Wright. So Arlette, or Apple Pie as her trail name is the first woman to complete end-to-end hikes of all 11 national scenic trails. Quinn is a former NCTA board member and is currently pursuing his own end-to-end hike of the NCNST. It was a really interesting conversation because the two had never met. They don't know each other. And while they're both avid hikers and they've both hiked excessively, both throughout our country and internationally, it was really a unique perspective to hear. There's about 20 to 30 years difference between the two of them age-wise, and as well as, I guess, just abilities regarding their trail use and their different goals that they had in mind and their paces. And so to hear them share their experiences and where they were similar and where they were different was really, really, really interesting. Joan Young and Luann Johnson recorded a conversation. Both of these women have completed the entire trail, becoming 2 of the first women to do so. And Joan actually just recently completed it a second time at the age of 75. And they spoke heavily about trail use, but both of them are heavy in the volunteering world as well. So while we did focus a lot on trail use just then, we also spoke with Nikki Sobel and Jane Norton. Nikki is a hike leader and volunteer for the Chief Bob Beast chapter here in Michigan. And Jane is the president of the Chief Noonday chapter in Michigan. So they are both very avid volunteers with the North Country Trail Association. These friendly and innovative women maintain neighboring trail sections, and they often collaborate on events and trail work. So they spoke a lot to volunteerism and service, and how they collaborate as 2 separate chapters next to each other, but how they share their region. Tom Gilbert and Bill Menke had a really fantastic conversation. Tom was the first superintendent, the National Park Service superintendent of the North Country National Scenic Trail, and he was deeply involved in the original route planning for the trail. Bill worked for both the U.S. Forest Service and the NCTA, and closely with Tom for many years. He also played a significant role in the development of the trail itself over multiple decades. So both of these guys are really heavy hitters when it came to why the trail is where it is today and how it evolved over subsequent decades. And so their conversation was rich with history and with service, and why decisions were made in certain ways and why others were not. It was really, really fascinating to hear about the roots of the trail. Tessa Fenstermaker and Madeline Blavis both discussed their pretty new involvement with the Trail Association and with our trail community. Both women are, while they're avid outdoor enthusiasts, and they are both familiar with the North Country Trail, they are now recent members of our Next Generation Coalition, as well as NCTA chapters. They both bring excellent energy to the program, to their chapters and the association as a whole, both behind the scenes and directly on the trail. And by behind the scenes, we spoke a lot to their volunteerism. They're both, I believe, now on boards of their chapters. And so they help with a lot of planning work, but they also get out there in the communities too and help build trail. They speak with community members, and they both use the trail a lot. And so they had a very interesting conversation between the 2 of them on how it feels to be new members of this community and how to use the trail as young women too. So those were just a few examples of some of the recordings and some of the themes and messages that we honed in on. Again, we don't want you to feel boxed in by any of this. We just would love to hear your stories about the trail, about your use of the trail, your support of the trail, and how meaningful it is to you and your experiences with it, on it, with the community, and so on. And so here's a few resources for you if you'd like to dive in a little bit further. You can download the app. You can look into StoryCorps Connect, which is the web browser based. There's the podcast that you can listen to other examples. StoryCorps has pretty much zero limits about what they talk about. And so there's conversations from all over the country, from all walks of life, about all kinds of subjects. It's really beautiful. And you can hear all the unedited NCTA recordings through the archive at StoryCorps. And of course, if you have any questions, you can chat with me. To close this out, I also want to emphasize that really don't want this to feel like a transactional relationship. While we are casting the net out there to invite everyone to record their conversations and to add to this collection, to grow the stories of our trail community so that we can share them further and we can inspire and motivate and educate others. This also is very much so for the participants. We noticed when many of our participants were recording, they learned a lot of things about each other that they didn't know before. There were tears, there was laughter, there were hard discussions being, hard topics being discussed. There was a lot of joy too. And so it was extremely meaningful experience for them as well. And so please think of it that way too, that the process is a really huge part of this. And it goes back to StoryCorps' mission of strengthening relationships between people too. So while there is a really cool end result that can be used as great marketing and outreach for you, for the trail, for your local community, it also goes beyond that and really just strengthens a relationship between two people while they sit and have a conversation. So know that that is in the forefront of our minds, and please consider that for yourself as well. So thank you so much for your time. Again, if you have any more questions for me directly on maybe how you want to go about recording about your trail experiences, feel free to email me at klemon@northcountrytrail.org. And again, please take your time going through the StoryCorps website and seeing all the resources that they offer. Hope this was valuable to you, and I really look forward to hearing from you soon. Thank you.